Hello. I'm just getting set up here, waiting for people to join as well. How's everyone doing today? I have been sweltering hot all week, for the past 3 days at least. It's gotten a little bit cooler today after some weird thunder and lightning storm that we had yesterday morning. And it's weird only because we almost never have lightning storms in California. It's super rare. So to wake up at 4 a.m. to hear all these thunderous rolls is pretty unusual. Okay. So I've got here the thing that I've been working on all week. I was going to do this today, but I think that I'm going to do some other stuff instead, but I did want to show you the progress that I've made because I've been showing this off in my stories slowly over this past week. And it is a new piece for my butterfly series. Sorry, still trying to get stuff set up. Trying to get my other computer to show this live session so that I could read the comments easily. But it's refusing to do so. It's being stubborn that way. Loptitude says, oh wow, I didn't realize you were doing more than 3. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing these as long as they interest me. So far it has kept my interest. This one is the variegated checker spot butterfly. And I actually came across one of these little guys about 2 months ago when I was hiking, and I got a picture of him. And that's what I'm using for this. And those are some wild roses that I found on a different trail. And that is the monkey flower. That's what the yellow one is. And I've painted that before in a botanical painting just about the monkey flower. So that one was actually the easiest to do. And this one, I can't remember what it's called right now off the top of my head. All right, my other browser is just refusing to show the live session is going on right now, so I'm going to have to do the thing where I scroll back and forth constantly over here to read questions. So if I miss a question that you ask, my apologies for it, and you can ask it again if you think that I have just completely overlooked it. I wanted to actually play today with some new artistic isle stuff that I've got here. These are some little travel-sized samples of color, and I thought that this would be a fun thing to do. I'm not sure what I'm going to paint with it. And I have these random washes that I did a while back, and I figure I'll just add to these now, just because I never really did anything with them before. And let's start with this one. Like I said, I'm just going to mess around with these. I don't really have much of a plan. So this is going to be a playtime session like I've done a few times. Starting off with some of this olive color. And this, as I said, is just a wash that I have done at some point in the past. I have a lot of these that I just kind of keep in my drawers, where if I don't have any ideas at the moment and I'm feeling like just moving paint around, I will splash some stuff, some pretty colors onto a page, let it flow and move around, and then stuff it away for a rainy day, or as today is a very, very hot, unrainy day. And frequently I'll dig these up then at some point in the future, and the shapes and the patterns, or the way the paint has made textures, will inspire me to some kind of form. And I pick it up then and just start messing around with it like I'm doing now. So these are really good for those times when you just don't know what you're painting and you don't really feel, I was gonna say you don't feel inspired, but it's not even that. It's just like you don't really want to have any deep thought put to a concept. So then I go for the more instinctual types of pieces and things that are just more impulsive. I'm going to tape this down because actually I want to use some Indian ink on it, and that's going to get messy, and I'm going to tape this down before. So let's do that now. This is just artist masking tape. And it's going to be better if I did it before I got stuff wet, but we'll make do. Okay, so now I've got this stuff, Winsor & Newton Indian ink, liquid Indian ink, and I've shown off this technique before in the past in other videos. I don't think I've done it in live sessions. I've done it in pre-recorded things, and people always have questions about my speckled texture technique, and so I'm going to show you how that works right now. And you have to be sure, if you're going to do this, that it is this specific bottle that you get. There's like some other black ink that Winsor & Newton has, which doesn't have this dragon on it, and if you get that, it's not the right kind. This won't work because some reason, something about the formulation of this particular brand and line makes the ink separate into these very large clumpy particles when I add a lot of water to the page. So you see, I didn't really add that much ink. I actually just splattered a few times. I'm going to bring this up closer, and I'm going to be tilting my page a lot and letting the ink run. The first few times when I was doing this, after I discovered the textures that it made, were really terrifying because I had no idea how to control control these textures and control where the flow was going. And a lot of times I would spend a lot of effort into doing a very detailed sketch only to have it completely obliterated once I started doing this. So I try not, you notice I'm not brushing at all. I'm not using my brush to move across the page or scrubbing. All I'm doing is just dotting water onto the spots of ink and then tilting my page and letting stuff move and flow within the wet area. Because if you scrub it, then what happens is the particles get into your paper and they settle in there, and then you don't get the granulated effect that I get from doing this. You need water for it to run, water for it to move around in, and this can take a long time to dry now at this stage. So then I set this aside and do other things. But before I do so, I'm going to drag out some little tendrils of liquid so that this can flow outwards and into these little twiggy, branchy shapes. Now already there's some separation happening with the particles. You can see that right over here especially. See it in that area. So you don't want to touch the, you don't want to touch it at all with your brush, because if you do, as I said, that will just cause your particles to embed into the paper, to really soak into your paper, and then you don't get this really cool granulated texture any longer. It just becomes gray or black. So I'm trying not to mess with the particles, and really I'm just trying to drag liquid out from the edges so that the particles have channels to flow into. And as long as it has those channels to flow into, then it can do its thing, and it can spread out in there, and it can granulate and do its cool stuff. This over here is 140 pound. It just happens to be what I had these purpley green washes on already. I don't know if you were here from the beginning, the person asking that. Oh, that's Marla. Yes, I don't know if you were here at the very beginning, Marla, but I had just grabbed a couple of sheets of watercolor paper that I had previously messed around with, just playing with some of the Roman Sesmal colors and letting things mingle in a wash. And then I never ended up doing anything with it, so I had it shoved away in my drawer, and now I just pulled it out to use as a base for this. So it would not be my preferred choice if I was going to plan this as a piece and I wanted to do this inky technique. In general, I like to use 300 pound or more, but I have done it with 140 pound like this plenty in the past for pieces that I've had showing in galleries. So you do have to make sure it's anchored down before you start so that you don't get too much buckling. And again, which I did not do for this right now because this is kind of impulsive and spur of the moment. So it's not ideal, but I can work with it. And you can see as I drag this water out that some of the particles in here in this area started to trail out as well. You can see that. I'm going to zoom in closer. Or at an angle so the light doesn't hit the water reflection. Yeah, this is Mineral Violet and Aquarius Green as the base. And then when I started painting the tree, I was using some of Artistic Isle Olive Green. I was using that color as the base into which I then poured the ink. So I do like having some kind of color base before I do the inky stuff, just because doing anything after is difficult without ruining the texture of the ink. So more or less, once I have the ink dried, I want to touch as little as possible, and the only time I'm going to paint on top of it is either with an extremely dry brush so that it's not going to lift the ink and lift those particles, or else with a layer of clear watercolor ground on. And I used to do a spray of a workable fixative before doing anything on top, but then I found that if I wait till it's completely dry and then I swipe very, very briefly with a wide flat brush using clear watercolor ground, I can actually get a layer of clear watercolor ground over it without disturbing the ink stuff too much. If I want to have the ink stuff completely clear and crisp as it is, as the texture is when it dries, then you do need to spray a little bit, but I don't like using spray. I avoid it unless I absolutely need to, like when I'm doing my resin stuff. And so if it's not required, then I actually try to avoid having to spray, just because I hate the stuff. I hate having to get a mask, and it's stinky, it's not good for you, all that stuff. Yeah, Undersea Green is one of my absolute favorites from Daniel Smith, also, Marla. I like both of these. Actually, I haven't actually done a straight up comparison to see how they differ from each other. Maybe have to do that later. Maybe if we're waiting for stuff to dry, I might do that. All right, so generally I like to have several jars of water when I'm doing this, because this is what it looks like after the little bit that I did. And I have a few jars here, so I don't need to run off and grab something else right now. And yes, stretching just means, well, I guess technically, yes, it means wetting the paper and then taping it down. I don't ever actually bother with that full rigmarole of stretching and stuff. I just tape down my dry paper to a board, and especially if you use heavyweight, so I most of the time use 300 pound, which is this is a 300 pound paper. This is Moulin de Roy, and let me see if I can find a 140 pound in my stash here. Let's see. No, this is not 140, but it's similar thickness to 140 pound. Okay, wait, can we see this or not? I think I can get that to focus. So the one on top is the 140 pound, the one below is, the one on top is the 300 pound, and this would be approximately 140 pound. So it is a bit more lightweight and flimsier, but the 300 pound generally is fairly stiff. You can see that. It's thicker than cardstock. I'd say it's like double cardstock. And if I tape that down and make sure I don't untape it until things are completely dry, I don't really have any buckling problem whatsoever with that, even with the very heavy water treatments that I do on a lot of my paintings. And like I said, even with 140 pound, I haven't had a whole lot of problem. I did a lot of this technique for several of the paintings that I showed in my recent exhibit at Modern Eden it was in January. It feels like so long ago. So I had a number of pieces that I showed in January, and they were done on a 140 pound. I was using fluid paper back then for it, and they were just fine. I had a little bit of buckling, and so all I did was you just take when you're done, the painting's all dry, you just kind of lightly spritz the back of it with a spray bottle of water, and then you can put it underneath some heavy stuff. I sandwich it between some layers of unused glass because I have a lot of framing that I do, and frames, when you buy them ready-made, they always come with glass, and I don't like that. I use plexiglass, so I always replace the glass, and then I have glass that I end up having to recycle, but I keep a couple of pieces of it for doing this so I can sandwich the paper painting in between. But you also have to be really careful not to get the water too wet. And when I say spritz it lightly, I really mean really lightly, because if you get it too wet, then you might reactivate your colors, and you don't want to do that because that would result in heartache if your painting decides to lift up and get rid of some of your details and lovely little bits of rendering. So another thing I love to do, even really wet washes, is to add little bits of sparkly stuff, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm starting with the olive green as a light base for these, and then I'm sort of dotting in to the wet paint with some of the sparkly, mica or duochrome stuff, because just like the ink, that stuff also spreads out and kind of pools and makes really neat looking textures and things. And it adds this gorgeous gleam in certain angles of light. I like how that integrates with my style of painting. I like the more subtle look, so sometimes stuff like this one, like this, this one would be cool, I think. Actually, no, let's try this one. What is this one? This one's Lumos. It's kind of a pale gold shimmery, and I just kind of dot that in and let the water spread and move it as it will. Randy, yeah, Fluid has both. They have two kinds, I think. They have a 100% cotton version of it, so you can look for that. If you make sure when you buy it that it says 100% cotton, it's pretty obvious on the ones that they have that are. And as far as I know, the pricing doesn't seem to be much more. I didn't notice anything that different. Oh, I love how this stuff has this shimmery spread as I lay it in. It's hard to get the light angle so that you can see it. Yeah, this is actually Arch's cold press Forever Wolf that I'm doing this on right now. It's this is, I think, Arch's 140-pound cold press. I know a lot of artists that really like Arches. I'm okay with it. I have a whole pad, which I'm trying to use up. A whole watercolor block of it. But I find that the colors are not as vibrant on it as it is with some of the other papers I use, which is why it's not my personal preferred paper choice. Okay, this is drying, and I don't know what else I'm going to do on it just yet, but let's play with another sheet while that is drying. Okay, here's another one. I sketched a little thing over there. That's the only thing I've sketched. I don't know if you can see it. It's just the squirrel sitting on the edge of a cliff there. What paints are these? So the base that I've got here right now is something I just messed around with a while back and never did anything with. And that's Roman Sesmal. Colors, I believe, are, I don't even know how to pronounce that, Presbys Gray and Mineral Violet and Aquarius Green. So that's what this is over here. No, this is Roman Sesmal, not Daniel Smith. And the other stuff that I'm playing with, the shimmery things, these are Artistic Isle. You can search for her on Instagram, and I'll definitely have links to all the stuff that I use. I always put those in the links when I save the archive of these videos after I'm done later. So when this session is through, give it a few minutes as I upload things, but you should be able to find any information about tools that I'm using there. Okay, now I am looking for another board to take my thing to, and I can't seem to find a board. Aha! Board found. This glorious painting is something I did when I was in junior high. And I hated it. And so now it is my painting board. Okay. Tape. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, sorry, Marla. Your video did not freeze. That was me looking for a board. So once again, I'm going to take this down. I've just got artist tape. Artist masking tape. It is acid-free, which is important if you're going to leave it on a painting for a while. And because I don't have the thinner one, which I usually use right now, I only have this thicker stuff, and I'm just trying to save on some. I am going to split it in half. What looks different from my work now, Forever Wolf? Oh, you mean the painting? Yeah. Well, that's about 30 years ago now, so things have changed a little bit in that time period. My mother was clearing out her attic a little while back, and she found a bunch of old paintings and art projects from my brother and I. Yeah, I saw the little spider, it just skittered across. She found a bunch of old paintings and art projects from our classes that I had done and my brother had done, and he's 4 years younger than me, but we had been through the same art teachers and stuff in high school, and she gave him the whole stack of stuff. She's like, here, take this, get this out of my house. And my brother and I were looking through them, and he found one of his pieces, and the teacher had given him, I think she gave him like an A-, because she was like, you're good, but why can't you ever just follow instructions? That's what was written on the back of the painting. Yeah, I still have not bought more tape because I still have this one, and I keep forgetting to order it whenever I place orders online. I just ordered something from Blick, actually. I just recalled this morning, and I didn't do it again. So, you see, that's why I'm still using the same one. Yeah, all right. So, what to do with this one? I think I kind of want to use those same colors. And start with a forest over here. Trying to move this in the best position for everybody. Yeah, I was kind of the opposite of my brother. I was the boring teacher's pet. Oh yeah, speaking of Inktober, I am busy plotting today what my next prompt list is going to be for this October. If anyone wants to join me for that, I have my own October prompt project, which is called Undying Tales, and you can find that on my website. You can go to undyingtales.com if you want to know about it. But it's a prompt list that features endangered creatures along with mythologies that feature them. And I had a lot of people joining me for that last year. And originally it was just going to be a one-time thing, but I had so much fun with it, and it was an amazing fundraiser because I donated all the money that went from the 31 pieces that I did to various environmental charities. So it was amazing for that, but also it was just a lot of fun to have people participate in that with me and to see all the creatures that everyone was drawing. So if you want to join me on that, then keep an eye on my feed, because I will be posting the prompt list sometime in the next month to give people a chance to prepare and start thinking about what kind of things to draw. And I was starting off researching today, or actually last night at midnight. And so when I started doing the planning, because it actually takes a lot of preparing and work on the back end to figure out what the prompt items are going to be. And I have this book, which is a bestiary. That's a translation and commentary on a bestiary of Chinese creatures and things. And so that was a fun starting point for me yesterday, and I got lots of ideas from that, and I'm excited to share that. Oh yeah, thanks Marla. The hashtag Undying Tales is the prompt list, and you can see what people were doing last year for that. By the way, I would never sit on a thing like this. I am terrified of heights. Let's do some more of the ink now. And again, you'll see I don't do a ton of ink. I just kind of dot a few places because a little bit of it goes a long way. And that's all I'm going to dot in here. And Art Lenka, no, I would not skydive. No way. My mom couldn't even get me to go off the high dive when I was a kid. I really, really wanted to because all my friends were doing it and I felt left out. and I kept climbing up to the top of the ladder. I was like 10 years old, I think. And I kept climbing up because I kept seeing my best friend go up and down and up and down and up and down. I'm like, I want to do that. And it was driving my mom nuts because every time I got to the top, I freaked out. And she was like, do you want to go or not? Do you want to jump? Jump! Like, I want to, but it's terrifying. Okay, so a little bit more over here. Yeah, I think that this live stream is having some problems today because normally I can set up my computer so that I can read the questions without having to view from the top with my cell phone over here, because my cell phone's how I record this stuff. And it's not even showing up on my computer as a live stream going on. And I tried on a few different browsers. That's why it took me a while to get started earlier, because I was trying to figure out what was going on with that. So it looks a lot darker here in the video than it does actually, because I'm actually not seeing too many particles, which is why I'm going to add one more drop there. So the technique aspect of this is learning how to make the water flow on the page the way you want. You know those cheap little kid Halloween and like party favor toys where it's like this little plastic maze thing with the ball, and you have to tilt it to roll the ball around through the maze and get from one end to the other. It's a little like that. Because you'll see an edge of water that'll be rolling around, and that's where you have to move that to get things to flow in the direction that you want, and you have to provide the path for it and then tilt the page in the right direction. And again, I'm doing that thing where I'm just dragging out the water in my wet areas so that I can have this very naturalistic transition from the wash that I made into these twiggy bits, and they don't feel like, because if I wait until after it's dry and then I do these twiggy bits, you'll be able to see where it was dry and where it was wet at which point. But if I do this now, then it feels more natural in the way one of them flows into the next. One part of it flows into the next area. And these branches then don't feel like I painted them separately, but they feel like I painted them all at the same time as I did the tree trunks. And I nabbed a little bit more of the olive color here for this one, because this tree is actually mostly just the green, and there's not too much of the inky stuff in it except for that top portion. It's a big puddle. Yeah, it is. That's why this stuff takes a while to dry, and then I just work on different portions of the painting while I'm waiting for stuff to dry, or even pick up a separate one like you see me doing here right now. Little sunshine art. How do I stretch my paper? I don't really stretch. I just tape it down with masking tape. And that's about it. And yes, I do tilt, as you saw, as I was describing with my little ball maze analogy. Tilting around until you get the paint and the leading edge of water to flow where I want it to. Do I like using burnt sienna? I don't think I actually have burnt sienna in my current palette. Let me see. No, I do not. I have some similar colors. I think this geothite is similar to burnt sienna, which is why I don't have it, because I like the geothite there for granulation properties instead. So a lot of the standard colors that I would otherwise have in my palette sometimes are replaced by granulating similar versions. Did I ever attend art school? I've considered it, but I just think it's overpriced in my area. Yeah, most art schools are overpriced, I think. I have sort of... See, that's always a tricky question for me to answer, because I do actually have an art degree, but the thing is, I didn't go to school for it, for that in particular. I went to school for computer science. And hold on, let me see if this light does better. It might be better to have it coming in from the side here instead. Aha, that's better there now, I think. It's tricky getting the light at an angle where you can see the colors well, but it doesn't reflect too much off of the big wet areas that I've got in this. All right, so yeah, art school, back to that topic. Sorry for those of you who have heard this before. But yes, I went to school for computer science, and I did art because I needed to do art, and I didn't pick my school for its art program. So as a result, the school I went to had an excellent computer science program. Art program was a little bit neglected. And it was also not the style or type of art that I would have chosen if I had been picking a school for its art. And it was a program that was very abstract expressionism oriented. In fact, the two professors there were probably very active in the 60s, and so their teachings and their art reflected that, as well as probably that whole attitude of the school in general, even outside of art. As I said, this was, I don't know if I actually said, it was Berkeley. And so art was, the art that I did there was very different from anything that I choose to do myself these days. And most of what I did there, even despite me doing my best to adhere to the conceptual art and abstract expressionism ideals, I was still called out way too frequently for being too illustrative and for trying to achieve beauty in my art too much over what they saw as more important conceptual things to convey. And So I struggled with the program, but I made it through that. And so as a result, yes, I have an art degree, and I did go to school and I studied art, but I would not say that it has a whole lot of direct relevance to what I do these days. It actually took me a while to even understand how it had an indirect relevance, however. And I feel like things like this now, the textury stuff, that actually is something that I think I learned to appreciate by those 4 years of avoiding representational work, and or at least trying very hard to avoid representational work, and working within the boundaries of what I was expected to do for the coursework there. And while this still would not be accepted within that arena, I feel like those years of doing that and of stretching my wings and of really trying to push myself outside of what I saw as a comfort zone for my art, it was important, I think, because it made me realize that even though I love doing very tight rendering and I love beauty in art, that there were these other elements that also have an attraction and a beauty to them. And they were things that I don't think I might have come to appreciate without this background of literally slinging paint onto canvases that were mounted to the walls. and so I don't regret that time spent doing that. However, I would not actively seek that out as a path from the beginning. You know, I wouldn't have gone there and done specifically art, seeking it as a career or any sort of artistic path. It was more like this was what I learned and what I got out of it, and I am grateful for that. But it is not in any way a sort of technical education on art or art making. In fact, I wasn't allowed to use watercolors and, you know, things like that. So, oh yeah, there's the dog. Right on schedule, as always when I'm doing these. And yeah, people do love boxes and to try to fit art within some kind of framework, and even when it is ostensibly in the name of being open-minded and expressive. And that was one of the things that drove me nuts about doing art in that setting, because it was so much about trying to push the boundaries of what was considered art, and yet they fixed this very firm boundary of their own in place about what was allowed to be created in this art realm. Yeah, slinging paint is actually a lot of fun, Marla. As you can see from this, because it's kind of what I do here. I sling ink at the page and just let it run and drip. Oh, they loved drips. They love drips. That was like one of the things that you were allowed to do. Drips were always considered a mark of the expressionistic thing. All right. I'm actually pretty happy with how those trees are looking there. I need to let it dry, though, before I can do more stuff in them. Oh, yeah, I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer. Forgot about that. Shimmery stuff. I forgot to add any. Let's see. Oh, Veritas. Can you see that one? It's kind of got a peachy kind of cast to it. Ooh, I like that. Oh, there, now you can see it there. Okay. You see that? It's kind of got this peachy pearlescent shimmer. Okay, so yeah, this stuff has to dry, and then what I would do next would be going in to work in the light and shadow over there for those trees. Let's do the Aquarius green versus undersea green showdown. Okay, undersea green will be this guy over here. It's the undersea green, and then I've got the Aquarius green, which is that. And where's my paper? Where's my watercolor paper? That arches pad that I was talking about. I can use this scrap. This was where I was testing out a lot of blues and things because I was trying to figure out what I want to stick in my mini palette. And this isn't even all my blues. Where is a brush? Okay, and I need a clean spot in my palette because I always have stuff in here, so I need to clean out a spot if I'm going to be trying out a color. Okay, getting some of the undersea green. I am not sure if this is the original version or not. I don't think so. Elmac. Okay, that's the undersea. Now let's try this Aquarius. Let me get a bigger brush, actually. They actually do look fairly similar. Here, I'm going to label that because I have short memory. I know I'm going to forget. See, that one's undersea, and this one is Aquarius. All right, I'm going to let those dry. And yeah, I always use up all the little colors that are left on my palette too. I almost never wipe them out unless I have to, like right now. Or if I'm trying to get a really pure color. Like right now I've got mostly greens and stuff here, so if I was trying to use some blue, I would probably, like some really piercing blue, I would probably wipe it out a little bit to not have the blue mingle too much. Now where's my other first thing that I was working on? This one is still not fully dry, because there's that big old patch in the middle, but you can see that glorious granulating that happened over here. I love that stuff. And actually, I think I put too much ink on here, but it might be partially the paper, the arches that I'm using, because I don't actually use arches or cold press very often. So I think it ended up being a lot darker than I expected. So I don't usually like it to be that black. Oh, dropping some water into the things. I think it looks like they're dispersing okay. Let's see. Yeah, they're spreading out pretty well, but let me just give it a little. There. We'll see what happens to those. How long do size 0 brushes last me? It depends on how much crazy detailed work I'm doing. Because if I'm doing stuff like this botanical painting here, where pretty much the entire painting is done dry brush with a size 0, then it will last me like 1 or 2 of these paintings. But it's not frayed past usability. It will just be, it won't be usable for that particular kind of painting any longer. And I then relegate it to second tier. So what I do with my brushes is I mark them off like this. So this means that this one's kind of a second tier one, where it's not quite as beautifully pointed a tip any longer, but it's still good. And see, this one doesn't have any notches on it yet, so this one's a fully first tier, still great for the finest of detail. And I'll just add more rings around the handle of the brush as they get older, and that's how I keep them. But I still use them even when they're super frayed. But this is for the sable brushes, because they do really last. It's the synthetics that don't really last as long, and those eventually, they go downhill fast once they start to get the little hooked tip on them. Do I have time to do much else here? Because it's actually getting down towards the end of an hour. Actually, it has been an hour. All right, just answering a few more questions, I guess. What kind of paper do I usually use? Normally, I like to use Kenson's Moulin de Roy, 300 pound. This right here is Arches, 140 pound. I've also used Fluid, 140 pound. So the Kenson Moulin de Roy is my preferred, but it is discontinued. So sorry. And I don't have any top tier recommendation yet for what I would replace it with if I were not using that, because I have stockpiled a bit of it once I heard that they were discontinuing. And yeah, I don't think that this little green test is going to dry in time here, but I will report it in my Discord, my Patreon Discord, and I will also put it into my Instagram stories later. So if anyone is curious about the differences between these two, I will add that in later. But thank you for joining me today. It's been an hour here, and it's been fun. And I will put a list of all the materials and things that I've used during the course of this, as well as the paint brands and stuff. And see you all next time, next Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you.